Can't make it through a movie without a bathroom break? Your prostate is sending you a signal. Think back to the last movie you watched in a theater. Did you make it through the entire film without getting up? Or did you find yourself, somewhere around the hour mark, doing that quiet calculation? How much longer is this scene going to run? Is now a good moment to slip out without missing anything important? Has it really only been an hour since I went last time? If that calculation has become a routine part of how you watch movies now, when it never used to be, I want you to pay close attention to what I am about to walk you through. Because that 2-hour benchmark, the length of an average film, has quietly become one of the more reliable real-world tests of bladder and prostate function that men over 50 unknowingly run on themselves every time they sit down at a theater or settle in for a long flight. I am Dr. John. I am a urologist, and today I want to walk you through exactly why the movie theater test matters, what your body is actually telling you when 2 hours becomes a genuine struggle, the specific mechanism connecting this to your prostate, and what you should do with this information starting with your very next movie. Let me start by explaining why 2 hours specifically is such a meaningful threshold. The physiology behind the standard movie-length benchmark. A healthy adult bladder, functioning normally, comfortably holds somewhere between 400 and 600 milliliters of urine before reaching the point where it signals a genuine, pressing need to empty. At a typical, moderate fluid intake throughout an afternoon and evening, most healthy adults produce urine at a rate that allows comfortable retention for roughly 2 to 4 hours between voids during waking hours. This is not an arbitrary number. It reflects the combined function of several systems working together correctly. Your kidneys producing urine at a normal regulated rate, your bladder wall possessing adequate capacity and the elasticity to stretch comfortably as it fills, your nervous system appropriately delaying the sensation of urgency until the bladder has actually reached a meaningful volume rather than firing prematurely, and your urethra, the channel through which urine exits, offering no significant resistance to outflow when you do decide to go. When any one of these systems is compromised, even modestly, the practical consequence shows up specifically in situations like a movie theater, a long meeting, a flight, or any other circumstance where bathroom access is either delayed, awkward, or simply less convenient than getting up from your couch at home. These are the situations that reveal the gap between what your bladder is now capable of and what it used to handle without any conscious thought at all. This is precisely why so many men notice their urinary changes first and most clearly in these specific contexts, rather than during an ordinary day at home where a bathroom is always close at hand and getting up costs nothing socially or logistically. The movie theater does not create a new problem. It simply removes the convenient workarounds that have been quietly masking a problem that was already there. What is actually happening if 2 hours has become difficult for you? For the majority of men over 50 experiencing this specific change, the underlying explanation traces back to benign prostatic hyperplasia, the gradual age-related enlargement of the prostate gland. This condition affects roughly half of men in their 50s, with that proportion climbing towards 70% by the 60s and approaching 80% by the 70s. Here is the mechanism connecting prostate enlargement specifically to your shrinking movie-watching tolerance. The prostate gland sits directly beneath the bladder and completely encircles the urethra at that point. As the gland gradually enlarges, it compresses that urethral channel from the outside, narrowing the passage urine must travel through to exit your body. This narrowing produces two distinct effects relevant to the movie theater scenario, and most men experience some combination of both without realizing they are actually two separate mechanisms. The first effect involves the bladder itself rather than the prostate directly. As your bladder works harder over months and years to push urine through an increasingly narrowed outlet, its muscular wall responds by thickening, a compensatory adaptation similar to how any muscle thickens when asked to work against greater resistance repeatedly. That thickened bladder wall, however, becomes less elastic and less able to stretch comfortably to its previous full capacity. A bladder that once comfortably held 500 milliliters before signaling urgency may now signal that same urgency at 300 milliliters or even less, simply because the thickened, less compliant wall reaches its functional capacity sooner. The second effect involves something separate from the mechanical narrowing entirely. The smooth muscle within the prostate and at the bladder neck contains a dense concentration of receptors that respond to your body's sympathetic nervous system, the same system responsible for your fight or flight stress response. When this system is more active, whether from general life stress, poor sleep, or simply the accumulated tension of daily existence, those receptors maintain a higher baseline level of muscular tightness in the prostate and bladder neck region. That added tightness functions as additional resistance to urine flow, layered on top of whatever physical narrowing the enlarged prostate tissue is already creating. The combined result of these two mechanisms, a bladder that signals urgency at a smaller volume than it used to, and a urethral channel offering more resistance to flow than it used to, is a meaningful reduction in how long you can comfortably go between bathroom visits. 2 hours, once an effortless stretch, becomes a genuine test of endurance. Why this shows up specifically in a movie theater before it shows up anywhere else? There is a specific reason the movie theater, rather than your living room couch, tends to be where men first notice this change clearly. At home, the bathroom is steps away. Getting up costs you nothing. Nobody notices. You can pause whatever you are watching. There is no social awkwardness, no missed dialogue, no climbing past other people's knees in a darkened row. The convenience of home effectively masks a meaningfully reduced bladder tolerance for a long time because the cost of responding to that reduced tolerance is essentially zero. A movie theater removes every one of those conveniences simultaneously. Getting up is socially conspicuous. It interrupts the film. It requires navigating past other seated people, often in the dark. There is genuine social and logistical friction involved in acting on the urge to go. This friction creates an incentive to delay, to wait, to see if the feeling passes, in a way that home environments never require. It is precisely this combination, a genuinely reduced bladder capacity meeting an environment that actively discourages responding to it promptly, that makes the movie theater such a clear and often startling reveal of a change that has actually been building gradually for a long time, simply masked by the convenience of everyday environments. The same logic applies to long flights, extended business meetings, religious services, and any other setting where getting up carries social cost or genuine inconvenience. If you have noticed this pattern specifically in any of these settings, the underlying mechanism is the same one we are discussing. What this does and does not tell you, and the distinctions worth paying attention to. I want to be precise here because the movie theater test is a useful early indicator, but its meaning depends heavily on the specific pattern you are noticing. If the difficulty is simply that you need to use the bathroom once during a 2-hour film when you previously did not need to at all, and this has developed gradually over a year or more, this fits comfortably within the typical benign pattern of early prostate enlargement. It is worth a conversation with your physician at a routine visit, but it is not something requiring urgent concern on its own. If you are now finding that you need to go more than once during a single 2-hour film, or that the urge arrives suddenly and with real intensity rather than building gradually, or that you experience genuine difficulty initiating the stream once you do reach the bathroom, or that you come away from urinating with a lingering sense that you have not fully emptied, these additional details suggest the underlying prostate changes have progressed further and deserve a more prioritized conversation with a urologist, rather than simply being filed away as a minor inconvenience. If the change has been sudden rather than gradual, developing over a matter of weeks rather than accumulating slowly over a year or more, that distinct pattern points toward a different process and deserves prompter evaluation specifically because of that different trajectory. And if you notice blood in your urine at any point, or experience pelvic pain alongside these urinary changes, or have a sudden and dramatic inability to urinate at all, these specific signs require prompt medical attention regardless of how the movie theater test itself has gone. For the substantial majority of men whose experience matches the first pattern, gradual, modest, developing over an extended period, with no other accompanying symptoms, this is a genuinely common and highly manageable situation, and there is a great deal you can do about it. What you can actually do, starting with your very next movie. The behavioral and lifestyle factors that influence bladder capacity and urgency are genuinely meaningful, and several of them can be applied directly to situations like an upcoming movie or flight. In the 2 to 3 hours before an event where bathroom access will be limited, shift away from caffeine and alcohol specifically. Both substances increase the rate at which your kidneys produce urine independent of how much total fluid you consume, and both have a direct irritant effect on bladder tissue that can lower the volume threshold at which urgency is triggered. A coffee or a glass of wine in the hours before a movie meaningfully reduces your functional window compared to drinking water instead. This does not mean restricting fluids generally throughout your day, which, as I have discussed in other conversations, tends to backfire by concentrating your urine and increasing bladder irritation. It means being deliberate about the timing of specific bladder-irritating substances relative to situations where you know bathroom access will be inconvenient. Empty your bladder completely immediately before the event begins, and take the time to do so properly. Many men, rushing to get back to their seat before the previews end, cut this final pre-movie bathroom visit short. Take an extra 15 to 20 seconds after the main stream finishes. And if you have noticed any sense of incomplete emptying generally, consider sitting rather than standing for this specific visit, which allows more complete relaxation of the pelvic floor and frequently produces more thorough emptying. Beyond the immediate situational fixes, the longer-term and more meaningful approach involves addressing the underlying mechanisms I described earlier. Regular movement throughout your day supports pelvic blood flow in a way that benefits prostate tissue health over months and years. Reducing the inflammatory dietary pattern of processed foods, excess sodium, and refined carbohydrates addresses one of the documented drivers of ongoing prostate enlargement. And the pelvic floor exercises I have discussed in previous conversations directly address both the muscular weakness contributing to urgency and the chronic tension contributing to functional urethral resistance, both of which play a role in exactly the scenario we are discussing today. None of these changes will turn back the clock to restore the bladder capacity you had at 30. But consistently applied, they meaningfully influence the trajectory of how these symptoms develop and progress over the years ahead, which is genuinely within your influence, even though the initial prostate enlargement driving the underlying mechanism is not something you can simply decide to reverse through willpower alone. When the movie theater test should prompt an actual appointment, not just a behavioral adjustment, I want to give you a clear, practical threshold rather than leaving this vague. If you find yourself unable to comfortably make it through a standard 2-hour film without at least one bathroom visit, and this represents a genuine change from how things were even just a year or two ago, that is a reasonable and appropriate prompt to schedule a conversation with your physician specifically about your urinary symptoms, rather than waiting for your next already scheduled annual physical to bring it up incidentally. This is not because the finding itself is alarming. In the overwhelming majority of cases, it reflects ordinary, common, highly manageable benign prostatic hyperplasia. It is because early evaluation expands your range of options considerably. The behavioral interventions are most effective when implemented before symptoms have progressed to the point of requiring more aggressive intervention. And a proper evaluation, including a simple conversation about your symptoms, a physical examination, and standard prostate-specific antigen testing, gives you and your physician an accurate picture of where you currently stand, rather than leaving you to guess based on movie-watching endurance alone. Annual PSA testing and prostate examination after 50 remain essential, regardless of whether you have noticed this specific pattern, because they catch what symptom monitoring alone sometimes cannot, particularly in the earliest stages. Bringing this together. The next time you sit down for a 2-hour film, pay attention, with genuine curiosity rather than anxiety, to how your body handles that stretch of time. If it has become a quiet negotiation, rather than something you never think about at all, you now understand exactly why, the specific mechanisms at play, and the concrete steps available to you, both for that particular evening and for the months and years ahead. Your prostate has been sending you this signal gradually and patiently for a while now. The movie theater simply happened to be where you finally noticed it clearly enough to pay attention. This is Dr. John. Notice the signal, then do something with it. I will see you in the next one.